Oh, do you get anything?
I'm just
Okay.
I
Okay.
had to agree to be included in the recording.
Gotcha. Right. Okay. Um, so as we go towards the school improvement priority 3 for student well-being. So there's quite a few things that we did as far as I just want to double check that you can see the screen because I can't see like a little pop-up. Uh,
Oh, I could see.
okay, all right. Um, so here is a module we did as far as student safeguarding. And this is also the one that we did an interview with. And so it's just looking at some of the numbers of what were like probable common incidences and injuries. So this is not just for 1 year, but over the course of 3 years, and kind of things that we could work on for going into next year. And one of those kinds of common incidences that seemed to me was the amount of like visits that Minnie had, and or nurse visits, and students just necessarily like not feeling well. And so one aspect of that was just and I know we talked about how this coming year there will be another school psychologist or student well-being counselor. And so I was just wondering what are things that we as teachers can do, because oftentimes when we have students that are misbehaving in class, we chalk it up to some sort of misbehavior that needs to be addressed. But I was wondering how many times that might actually be something where we as a teacher could identify that maybe this student is kind of just acting out because they need help, and they don't really know how to ask for it.
I think that's very good. Now, one thing we try to do is there's one-on-one advisory, like where
Right.
the
Yeah.
each teacher has 5 or 6 students. But what we've seen is it's very hit or miss. So you've served as an advisor for some students. What do you think
I,
about that system?
I've done the not the advisory, but the mentor mentee. And I've actually found that to be very useful, just because you're talking to those students one on one, and sometimes when they're feeling stressful and they're in that moment, they're much more likely to kind of open up a little bit. How much they do kind of depends on who that person is, and obviously the relationship that you're building with them. But I do think that there are students who, once they get into that position where they have someone that they know they can talk to on a weekly basis, that tends to kind of like open up a little bit more, so you can kind of identify how that student is feeling, and any sort of things that might need to be sort of like whether it's you, Minnie, Melissa, or Allie, kind of bring that to attention.
Yeah. The problem with that is a lot of kids fall through the cracks because some teachers aren't quite as
Yes.
diligent as others, and it leaves some kids just with not really any support.
Right. Um, do you have you have you talked to, well, I was just wondering like how many students kind of volunteer that information? Like how often do they just go to Mini? Um, or is it something until like we notice it? I wonder like what that kind of ratio is.
This year, I can tell you exactly 2 students brought it up to a dean that
Okay.
they didn't have a mentor and that they wanted one. And then we got both of those students, like a different mentor. And then we had a talk with the teacher that was supposed to do it and gave them a different duty. Uh, that was very inconvenient for them because we were quite upset that they weren't doing that. But it it stands to reason that there were other students that just didn't care. Like, oh,
Right. Yeah.
well. maybe I didn't get this. Because even the ones that asked, they were like, do I get a mentor? Does everyone get one of those?
Right. Okay. One of the things I talked about was Alex, or with Alex, the psychology teacher, and we were kind of talking about different ways that we could kind of approach that sort of thing, where like we give teachers a list of things that they could look for, but I wonder like how burdensome that might be, where you're putting a teacher in the classroom that like has to kind of consciously identify those things during a class. And so I don't know if maybe there was something that we could do training wise, that could, whether or not Minnie does that sort of thing during the on-site training.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Have you started working on that list?
I've still got a few things on it. So, but I just, as long as that's something that could potentially be done, so I've then I can add that. So I've got the teacher handbook. Uh, all Reza and I talked about that, about like having a booklet for teachers to use when they, or chairs to use when they go into the classroom, rather than computer based. And so we had a little bit of a discussion about how useful that would be. But I don't think he quite, like, from our conversations, it seems like it's kind of embedded that we will be using some sort of like paper base at the beginning of the year, when we do those observations and reflections. Um, so it seems like it would be something that's beneficial. So that's part one. And then part two would be, helping Minnie with that checklist on things that we can help to identify for. So yeah, absolutely. Um, and so to that end would be, so again, creating some sort of well-being checklist. Um, so, but this would, I can send to Minnie at a more appropriate time. But one would be, um, just making sure that we have something for teachers to kind of look at and identify what goes into identifying students where we have concerns about them, and not just going into a classroom and thinking that it's some sort of behavioral issue that we then just send to Melissa, you, or Allie. And so this would be like sort of what a PD session might look like, and having all of the different kind of stakeholders associated with it. And so that way we can kind of go through and identify, um, what it is that students are going to need outside the classroom for their well-being. I know that, like with the mental health week that we did this week, or this year, during comps, I thought that was really fun. um I think that the water day that we had to kind of de-stress students, those are, I remember in college we had like the mental health dogs that would come in, and you could basically go to the library and just, like, pet a dog while you read and study and review. But I do think that, like, that our school, compared to other schools that I've experienced in my career, that in China it can seem like sometimes like a stigma to address a student's sort of mental health. But the fact that we have those sort of things already in place, I do think that, like, that puts us a step forward, that we identify those students that kind of need help, and address it, and as a school as a whole. So I do think that that's pretty important work that the school does, for sure. So um then that's the other, for school priority number three. And then so I'll just pause it here because